So what is it? These are things I'm sure you know. And I think this topic is particularly relevant given lockdown, given coronavirus, given the fact that the government, the World Health Organization, has tried to create anxiety in all of us to keep us at home. If we didn't feel anxious, we would have carried on with our work, we'd have carried on going out and about. And so the media, the government, the world government have actually been stoking our anxiety, which is why it makes it a particularly relevant topic at the moment. So as we know, anxiety is a feeling. It's something inside ourselves. It's a worry, an apprehension, or nervousness. As we know, it's distracting at best and all-consuming at worst. I'm going to give you lots of examples from me that on Thursday I did a pitch for a large piece of work for a new client, and I came off the pitch, which had seemed very good, but what did I worry about? I worried about the one question in the hour and a half, which I don't feel that I answered very well. And it became distracting because I started ruminating about it. And in fact, it became all consuming. I woke up in the middle of the night, worrying about a stupid thing, which was 1 minute and an hour and a half. So anxiety can become distracting and all consuming. Oops. As we know, it's experienced at many levels, but mainly it's a feeling inside our stomach, and it leads to uncomfortable sensations in our body, and it contributes to negative thoughts. And we're going to look at negative thoughts and how they can spiral in just a minute. The bit to remember is most people feel anxious at times. You might think that you're the only person who feels anxious, but be really, really clear. Most people feel anxious at times. And again, as I say, we'll talk about why it's a good thing. And we tend to be anxious when we're faced with stressful events and changes in our life. And as I said, at the moment, the world can be a place that makes us feel anxious. So it's a normal, natural human response when we perceive we're in danger. One of the things I like about anxiety, which I find really fascinating, is it's very close to, but different to, both fear and excitement. So I was saying that anxiety, one of the things I find really fascinating about it is what's going on in our body is the same, whether it's fear or excitement or anxiety that we're feeling. But fear tends to be attached to a specific event. It tends to also be something that we know there'll be a negative outcome. When that tiger is in front of you, when you actually know someone who has had something terrible happening to them, we feel fear. Excitement, on the other hand, is actually exactly the same physiological responses as anxiety, but when we believe the outcome will be positive. I'm going to go to a party and I'm going to have a good time. I still have butterflies in my stomach. My hands still feel sweaty. I still find it hard to sit still. I still wander around. I might get overexcited and start shouting. So remember, anxiety is also a label we put on a number of physical things that happen to us. That's anxiety for you. A worry, apprehension, nervousness, horrible feeling, makes our palms sweaty, our stomach hurt, can wake us up in the middle of the night. And those thoughts, we tend to ruminate about them. But anxiety is our friend. And what I'm going to just show you here is just some of the research about why anxiety is a very positive thing. I think this is really important for everybody to think about. Anxiety is a warning sign. If we feel worried about the same thing again and again and again, the chances are that we need to change something in our work or our life. If you find, for instance, I didn't feel nervous particularly, not overly so, before doing a presentation, but if you feel constantly nervous before you're doing a presentation, maybe it is a sign to you that you need to go and do some refresher training, or maybe you should find a job which doesn't have presenting in it, whatever it might be. So it's a warning sign, one to pay attention to, can help you. It's also a motivator. All the research is that if you have no anxiety about an exam, about a presentation, about applying for a job, about meeting someone on a date for the first time, we need some anxiety to get us started, to wind us up, to help us put in that effort that we need, so it's a motivator. It's a built-in warning system. You know that bit about the saber-toothed tiger and how originally we were supposed to have anxiety. Either the words are fight, flight, or freeze. If there's a big lion and you're out in the jungle, do you run like hell? Do you fight the lion, or do you freeze and try and look like a tree? Those are the choices that we've got, which are inbuilt in us as a way of protecting ourselves. Now, we don't have saber-toothed tigers hanging around in the outskirts of London, though I did see yesterday, they looked like some horrible tiger in some road in London. But anyway, in modern times, it's how we respond to things that happen quickly in front of us. And we need that anxiety in this coronavirus phase, obviously, that nobody knew early on. Was it going to get everyone? Was it likely to get us? And as I say, the government, the World Health Organization stoked up our anxiety to get us to avoid it, to back off. It's also, anxiety is, interestingly, the research is people who feel anxiety and have had anxiety often make very good friends. They understand it. They're able to show concern to the people they're with. And so those of you who do find yourself anxious, you'll probably be able to empathize with other people who are going through that in a way that we'll come on to talk about in a compassionate way. It's also, for those of you who are leaders there, all of you can show leadership. It seems to be a plus in leadership because it allows our leaders to think through the options, to wonder about things, to be strategic, to step back, not just move into action, but to take the choices which will protect the organization, both in the short term and the longer term. Yeah, so those are the ways that anxiety can be our friend. I'll tell you in a bit how you can turn those negative feelings into positive things. But just before that, I want to talk about the downside of our friend anxiety. So the problem with anxiety is it can become a frenemy. Not quite a friend, but a friend who's a bit of a pain in the stomach generally. A friend who's there all the time, who needs a lot of attention. When we're feeling anxious, we ruminate and go over and over and over and over and over, and it's very hard to stop that feeling. Anxiety, when it's got hold of us, tends not to leave. It doesn't want to go home. We don't have any time away from it. And actually, anxiety even wakes you up in the night. I told you, I woke up in the night worrying about one question that I hadn't answered right. So anxiety, the problem is it can be a friend, but it can be our most demanding friend ever. What I want to help you know is how does it shift from a friend into the person that you don't want around. And how does it turn into that most demanding friend? It's when our anxious feelings go into what we call negative automatic thoughts. That's a psychologist's words, that the problem happens when our anxiety becomes exaggerated, when anxiety, your friend, becomes your enemy. And we, I think in everyday language, talk about people going into a doom zoom. It's that spiral where you can't get out of it and it feels like it's taken over your life. I'm sure many of you know that feeling. So Aaron Beck, he was an American psychologist. He coined the term negative automatic thoughts, or NATs. That's when anxiety is no more your friend, but your frenemy. And what are NATs? It means that your thoughts are always negative. Oh my God, I lost the presentation because I didn't answer the question on benchmarking properly. They come readily and unbidden to your mind. I was eating supper, they were there. I was on a walk, I was trying to watch a film, they were there. They're distorted and not proportionate to the facts. You know, the presentation was an hour and a half. They nodded their head and loved the rest of it. That one question, it didn't come out right, and it's the bit that I worried about. That they weren't very helpful. They didn't help me think through, you know, do I want this piece of work? Why do we want this piece of work? How will we manage it if we do get it? Because it's a big piece of work. Instead, I worried about not answering one thing right. And the familiar bit is that, you know, the familiar bit for me is focusing on the one thing I didn't do right rather than on the 97 that I did really, really well. So that's your negative automatic thoughts. So what I'd like you to do now is I'm going to tell you a story. And I'd like you, as I tell the story, to think about it. And after I told you the story, I'm going to get you to jot down some thoughts about what your response tends to be. Ready for that? So this is the story. I want you to imagine the following scenario. Many of you might have been in it at many times, but anyway, here's the scenario. You're at home and you're preparing for an important presentation that you've been working on for quite a long time. You collect your notes and your laptop and you get in your car and off you drive, and it's a nice sunny day and you've got plenty of time. Some of you might be starting to feel anxious already. So, because you know what's coming, or you think you know what's coming. So you see some traffic up ahead and you think, but I'll be okay. I've still got plenty of time to get there. Bit later on, though, you see the traffic thickening and you start to wonder what's actually wrong. This has slowed down a lot more than it should do. And actually you've come to pretty much a standstill and you're wondering what to do. So you reach over to your bag to get your mobile phone out, only to notice that you forgot to charge it last night. So you're not going to be able to phone whoever it is that you want to, nor look on your screen to see how long you might be stuck in this traffic jam. Sitting there for a bit longer, you see that there's actually a taxi and you decide that you're going to park your car and you're going to get out of it and you're going to run over because the driver might know what's happened or might have some ideas about how long it's likely to take you and is it a usual thing or not. And in fact, the taxi driver says that they can get you to your meeting faster than you could. And so you drive off in the taxi and you get to your destination on time. You jump out of the cab, you run into the building. Oh no, only to find that the venue for the meeting has changed. And they did send you a message about it, but your mobile phone wasn't working, so you don't know. But they think that you can make it in 5 minutes if you run. So that's what you do. You run, feeling sweaty, hands starting to shake a bit. And you do get there out of breath, arrive 7 minutes past the start of the meeting. You enter the building and open the door to the room where you're about to make your presentation. Feeling anxious? So the question I want to ask you is, what are your negative automatic thoughts in a situation like that? When did you start feeling anxious in my story? And then which of these negative automatic thoughts do you have? How many of you do all or nothing thinking, oh my God, I'm an idiot, I'm hopeless, I'm always late. You condemn yourself on the basis of a single event. Is that going through your mind? Perhaps it's catastrophizing. Oh no, I've ruined it. The presentation's going to be hopeless. They're not going to buy from us. You make things worse just on the basis of one, and you think of the worst scenario. How many of you personalize it, take responsibility, blame yourself for everything? Oh no, it's my fault. If only I'd left with half an hour extra, it would be all right. I'm the idiot. It's always me. How about those of you who always take the negative focus? Instead of saying, actually, I'm here, and amazingly, I'm only 7 minutes late. Instead, you're the person who says, I'm 7 minutes late, and that's just like me, isn't it? And I've probably ruined things. How many of you jump to conclusions? This is a lovely one, that we jump from our own feeling of inadequacy into being absolutely sure we know what everybody else is going to be thinking. They think I'm an idiot. They won't listen to what I have to say. They won't buy from me. They probably won't even listen to my presentation. We think we know what they mean. Or number 6, do you live by some sort of set of fixed rules, which are about should or must, everybody, nobody, which tend to make us feel guilty? Are you the person who said, I should have left earlier, I must apologize, I can never succeed? What I'd like you to do is just jot down for yourself, both thinking about the story I told and also your normal negative thoughts. Which one or two of those do you think is most like you? And maybe even which one or two do you never do or just occasionally get to you? A few of you here probably not many, might be lucky enough to think, I never think negative automatic thoughts. I'm always an optimist. Write that down if that's true of you too. Your task is to notice them. We've done that. It's also then to gently challenge the logic. The other person who's with you, you need to tell them what you tend to feel. And their role is to help you think through, is that true? Why do you think that? And then also have a discussion about where do you think you learnt those negative automatic thoughts? Who do you think taught them to you? Where do you think they came from? Was it how your mum and dad talked to you? Or was it how they talked to themselves and you've copied it? Or maybe it was your teachers at school who spoke to you about stuff like that. Or maybe it was somebody else in your life who you've learnt from that's the way of responding. So what you're doing at this point, and we'll come back to it, is with negative automatic thoughts, the way to change them is notice what they are and find some realistic options. Just notice what your negative automatic thoughts tend to be. And then as you notice when they happen, the other bit in terms of noticing is find a friend who can point it out to you. There you go again, you're doing the should, ought, you're doing the mind reading, you're doing the blaming everyone else. And start to tell yourself a more realistic alternative. So negative automatic thoughts, really important bit, notice them, notice what yours are, find a friend who can help you notice when you get triggered by that, and then really practice talking to yourself and saying, is there a more realistic alternative? Those are when your friend anxiety becomes your frenemy, and we go down that line. Anxiety is a friend, but it's only a friend if we talk to it and we actually bring that feeling that is anxiety out into the open. I want to talk to you about 4 different levels which we experience feelings at, which you'll see are there in anxiety. The first level which we have a feeling is what's called the somatic. It's when the body feels something is wrong. When we're anxious, we tend to feel it in our stomachs, we feel it in our necks, we feel it in our shoulders, we feel it in the sweat in the palms of our hands or the stickiness in our feet, and we often feel sick. When babies are first born, the only way they know they feel something is in their body. Their body feels wrong. What we learn to do, the level after that, is what's called motor. That's the second level, when we begin to go beyond just the feeling into moving our body, into twitching. When we're anxious, we can twitch, we can fiddle, we can cross our fingers, we can fiddle with our hair. We start pacing. Often when we're anxious, it's quite hard to sit still. Sometimes it leads to crying. Crying is often us actually keeping the feeling in, not letting it out enough. And so the people who let it out but still haven't found words for it, they do the other bit, which is slamming doors, hitting things, shouting. But they're all ways of knowing we have a feeling but not actually having put words to the feeling. The third is the images. When we begin to know, it's like I've got a heavy weight on my shoulders, it's like I'm sick to the stomach, it's like there's no way out. Or we have a dream. I was telling you about my pitch last Thursday. On Monday night, I woke up having had 3 quite incredible dreams. The first one was that we lost the pitch and the other people got it. The second one was that I was meeting the other people who'd done the pitch and that none of us had heard. And it was Friday, end of this week, and still none of us had heard. And we were in an awful office waiting room. And the third one was that we won it. And in fact, that one I was about to go and tell everyone in the office and then realized it was a dream and woke up. Anyway, here we are, it's Wednesday, and we still don't know. We haven't heard anything. And I know the other party haven't heard anything either. So how did I know that in the dream, that the client they promised us that they'd tell us on Friday evening or first thing on Tuesday morning, and we've heard nothing. I have no idea why that dream came into my mind, but it is being in touch with the feeling. And then the final one, and the way we can turn anxiety into a friend, is if we talk to it. if we verbalize it, if we get our feelings out, that leads to a new understanding. And it's only when we can talk about our anxiety that we can change it, really change it. And the question is, how do we talk about it? How many of you know when you're feeling anxious, you apologize or you're critical of yourself? Don't be like that. Pull yourself together. Get over this. It's not that bad. All those things are not actually very helpful when we're feeling anxious. The challenge with anxiety is to be a kind friend to your feeling and treat yourself with self-compassion in the same way that you'd be compassionate to a friend who was feeling like that. And the work on self-compassion, which I find really fascinating, it's about teaching ourselves to treat ourselves the same way we would a baby. Think of Kirsty with her baby. There are a few people who treat babies badly, but most people, if a baby's upset, you pick it up, you hug it, you stay with it until it's calmed down, and then you help it find a new way forward. Obviously, when it finds language, then you can talk to it. And yet with ourselves, if we treated a baby the way most of us treat ourselves, particularly when we're feeling anxious, the baby would be taken into care. We tell it off, we shout at ourselves, we say it's not worth paying attention to, we try and pretend it's not there. So the important bit is about being compassionate. There's some fabulous work by this woman, Kristin Neff. If you just put in self-compassion, she'll come up as the first person in all your Google searches. And she's got both descriptions about what self-compassion is, but also lots and lots of exercises about helping yourself learn to treat yourself how you would a baby. Be kind to yourself. And there are 3 elements of self-compassion, and we'll see how that links to making anxiety your friend in a second. First one is be kind to yourself rather than judgmental of yourself. When we show self-compassion, we're warm, understanding to ourselves. We don't beat ourselves up. We acknowledge that we're imperfect, and that's okay, because nobody can be perfect the whole time. Nobody wants a friend who's perfect. In fact, perfect people, if they exist, which of course they don't, are horrible. So this is about saying it's okay not to have got everything right. It's okay to have messed up one question, Arabella. Actually, you did an awful lot well, and isn't that interesting? It's something in the business we need to think more about. It was useful. So we don't deny it, we're kind to ourselves, because the starting point of change is to accept yourself. And the moment we start to do that and feel sympathy for ourselves, it helps us feel calmer. Second way is to realize we're not alone. We really are not alone. We're not the only person in the world who's got something wrong. We're not the only person in the world who has messed up a presentation, who's been in a difficult relationship, who has failed to deliver something on time, who's turned up late to a meeting. All humans get things wrong. And the more we realize we're not alone, the easier it is to be kind to ourselves. I don't know where this fantasy that most of us have some of the time, that we're the only people in the world, that everybody else is perfect, because actually we know, if we stop and think about all the people we love them with their imperfections as well. And the final bit is to be, can't quite see the words here, not to over-identify with it, not to keep that feeling inside yourself. And this is where the language bit comes out, which is to take that feeling outside yourself and to pay attention to it, but not as part of yourself, as something outside yourself. And there's this fabulous research about self-compassion coaching, which I'm going to get you to work on in pairs again. I'm going to send you off into different pairs, 10 minutes each way. And you're going to choose a topic. It can be something important, it can be something small. Person A is going to talk about their anxiety, but they're going to talk about it as a third person. Arabella feels worried that she messed up the presentation bit on benchmarking, and talk about it. Person B then helps that third person by asking questions. Okay, so talk to me about Arabella's anxiety. What is it that Arabella is worried will happen? And why does that matter? And how likely is it to happen? And has it ever happened before? So I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the anxiety as the third person, as something outside myself. Because the moment we take it outside ourselves, the easier it is to distance it and to think differently about it. We feel much more anxious and emotional about things. If we can see it from the third person and take it outside ourselves, so we see the person walking down the corridor, we have more options and we're more distanced from the feeling. And that's why this exercise about take the thing you're worrying about, talk about it as if it's something outside yourself, often gives us new options to cope with things. So I'm going to bring us to the end because it's coming to the idea. Why would you make anxiety your friend? Because anxiety, even though it's that moment of not knowing, it's actually an energizing force. If you have no anxiety, you sit on your backside, you do nothing. We need it to get going. It's that moment of not knowing what the outcome is going to be. But remember, it's a bit like a boisterous friend at a party. It can take over and become unruly. We don't want that. So we have to befriend it and tame it. And the things we've been talking about, manage it with your automatic thoughts, challenge their logic, offer up more realistic outcomes, notice what they are. Put the feelings and physical sensations into words. What am I worried about? Is that real? Where does the feeling come from? Pushing down our anxiety, keeping it in our body, pretending it's not there. It doesn't go away, it sits there, it comes back out, it comes out in a dream, it comes out in a hurt bit of our body, it comes out in our cells. Being able to talk about it is important. Be kind to yourself. If you're feeling anxious, it's okay. Other people feel anxious. It's all right to worry about things. Be kind to yourself and understanding. And then finally, talk about your feelings and talk about them as if they're a third party. Get them outside yourself.